Today, guys, we are going to be going over pre and post testing for update 7.3.6. Now, the purpose of these videos is to kind of give you a point of reference. We want to answer questions like, hey, how bad was Quicksilver Storm nerfed? Is Last Word a monster now? These are the things we want to answer, and this is why we do pre and post. By the way, some of these changes were PvP only, but surprisingly, there was a lot of changes that were just outright blanket changes, which Bungie hasn't done for quite some time. We're going to start, though, with our exotic weapons. We have Quicksilver Storm, which received a substantial nerf. This was one of the top PvE primaries in the game for well over a year now. But Bungie increased the shots to trigger rockets by 50%. They also reduced grenade area of effect damage versus combats by 37.5%. Now, pre-update 7.3.6, it would take 12 shots to trigger one of those little rockets that you see there. And yes, those little bad babies put in some work. Now, post-update, it's gonna take 16 shots to trigger a rocket. Now, on paper, I know that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, and I guess it's really not, but keep in mind, previously, you could proc 4 of those rockets in a single mag. Now, though, you'll only be able to proc 3. Now, of course, time-wise, we're not talking like a huge difference. I mean, you're gonna have to shoot for 0.25 seconds longer, but it is that extra rocket that you're missing out on in a single magazine of Quicksilver Storm. Now, the other big nerf, which is an even bigger nerf, is the AoE damage, the grenade launcher damage. Bungie reduced the area of effect damage versus combatants by 37.5%. Now, our AoE damage was dealing 73,146 damage pre-update. Now it is doing 46,097. That is a hell of a nerf, guys. Without a doubt, it hurts. And by the way, these rocket triggers are very important for Quicksilver's grenade launcher shots, because every time one of those rockets go off, you get a grenade launcher shot. So I know there's gonna be somebody out there like, oh, Cross, this is not that big of a deal. Fellas, this is a big nerf. And instead of Quicksilver Storm being that huge powerhouse of an exotic, it still has that to some capacity, but it's kind of leaning more into like that utility exotic, as it can create tangles with those grenade launcher kills, which is still fantastic. So I'm not saying that Quicksilver Storm is dead, but in terms of pre and post, we have to acknowledge that this is a substantial nerf. Now moving on, Whisper of the Worm. Bungie actually increased the total ammunition from 18 to 24. This is before reserves. Now I know this is pretty self-explanatory, but just to give you some numbers, previously its base total damage was 2,158,364 damage. With reserve mods, it was 2,905,490. Now in post, you hold 24 at base. With field prep, it's 28. Max with reserve mods, it's 30. Matter of fact, reserve mods with field prep is still 30. So you definitely run into a ceiling there, but that is a lot of damage. When you look at the board here, you can see base is 2.905, 490 damage, essentially matching what it used to be with max reserves. Then with field prep, we're talking 3.3 million, and this goes all the way up to 3.652. Again, this just solidifies Whisper of the Worm literally has the best total damage in the game. I think the issue is, though, how many bosses are we really able to take advantage of this reserve buff? It's nice, but I think many of us were hoping for like a damage buff, and not necessarily a sandbox change, but just something in the traits. A lot of us were hoping we were going to get Precision Instrument as one of the traits, which would have been phenomenal. These are just theoretical numbers, which I guess if you had like a super long damage phase at some point in the future, yeah, you can use Whisper of the Worm. Part of me wonders if we're going to have like a final shape raid encounter where we're going to need something like Whisper for like some super long damage phase. The issue with that, though, too, is that if it's anything up close, this sucker is zooming, and it's a sniper rifle, so very situational. Moving on, though, 1,000 voices. Bungie increased the total ammunition from 7 to 11 before reserve mods. It would actually max out at 8 with reserve mods. And just give you some numbers here in terms of pre-total damage. At base, it was 1.2 million. At max with reserves, it was almost 1.4. But post, base is now 11, which is quite the bump there in ammunition. Now, this only goes up to 12 with reserve mods, but in terms of base damage, we're talking big jumps across the board. 1.9 million at base and over 2 million, almost 2.1 million with the reserve mod. Now let me be clear, in terms of DPS, this doesn't move the needle. 1,000 voices falls behind so many weapons, and we've shown that before in our DPS testing. I think the reality is that now is the time, Bungie. Give us an exotic catalyst. I don't know if they're gonna do it, but that's the only thing that can really save 1,000 voices. And we brought this up not that long ago, but I think an excellent catalyst would just be something that feeds into the ignitions. Like every single burst increases the next burst ignition damage and makes that explosion larger. Just keep doing that over and over. Next on the list, we have Forerunner. Now, Forerunner inadvertently received the primary ammo sidearm critical damage bonus buff, but Bungie fixed that. But they increased its base damage to compensate. Now, inside of PvE was doing 19,557 damage. Inside of PvP, it was doing 92 damage per crit and 45 damage per body. Now, post, it's actually doing more inside of PvE, just slightly, at 20,783. You've probably been seeing some people bringing it inside of Onslaught to deal with Tormentors. I don't think it's the best for Tormentors, but I get it. It does crit damage. That's its whole thing. If you like using it against Tormentors, go crazy. Now, crit damage is 86. So this is a nerf, but its body damage has been increased to 48. I think the main thing right here, guys, is only on select resilience guardians, and I'm talking like low resilience guardians, are you going to be able to get the 2 crit 1 body. But again, not a whole lot really changed here. It's really Bungie reversing a buff that it unintentionally received, but at the same time, they gave it an individual buff, which bled over into PvE. Now moving on to the last word. Bungie increased the base damage by 6%. Now its crit damage previously was 77, and its body damage was 37. Now with the new PvP sandbox launch, last word was not able to 3-tap anymore against guardians at 10 resilience. Now though, Bungie increased the crit damage to 81, and they increased the body damage to 39. Now this change is mainly targeted at PvP. Can you bring last word inside of PvE? Yeah, I mean, it did get an increase in damage there too. There are some people that actually rock Lucky Pants and last word in PvE. Although I will say Malfeasance, Warden's Law, those hand cannons, I think they're a lot better. Now we're actually going to be doing some Lucky Pants hand cannon testing here soon. Last word will be a part of that, and we're going to be comparing all of them. The big one we're really going to be comparing it to though is Luna's Howl with Magnificent Howl. Overall inside of PvP though, last word should be feeling much better in this sandbox. Now on to our weapon archetypes. Those were all of our exotic changes. A lot of these were targeted toward balancing PvP, but it all affects PvE. Again, these are the blanket changes. Starting with our Breech-Loaded grenade launchers. This was a nice buff inside of PvE, but also a concerning buff inside of PvP. Grenade launchers got an increase in impact damage by 40%. Now this works out to be roughly a 15% overall damage buff. Keep in mind, total damage varies depending on the blast radius stat. Now they increased the Mountaintop's PvE damage to make it competitive with other Breech-Loaded grenade launchers. And they also reverted a change from Season 12 that made Mountaintop less accurate while airborne. No lie, guys, you couldn't hit crap. You literally jump in there and your shot would go straight left or straight right or somewhere completely away from your reticle. Now pre-data values. Salvager Salvo inside of PvE was doing 36,435 damage. Post, it's doing 39,751. So quite the buff here, guys. PvP was doing 219 damage, which means it couldn't get the one-hit kill, except on like very, very low resilience guardians. Post though, it can actually get the one-hit kill on all resilience levels, hitting at 239. Now wave frames, for instance for Barons, was doing 35,715 damage inside of PvE. Now this is of course the direct impact damage plus the wave hitting them. Post though, this has moved up to 38,337 damage. Now inside of PvP, it would do 168 damage, again with that same thing where we would direct impact and then hit him with the wave. Now though, it's doing 192 damage. You can see where the needle has moved. The wave itself though is still the same. It's just the direct impact, which is not that big of a deal because most people that use wave frames inside of PvP, you're going for the wave shot, take off a chunk of health, and then follow up with the primary. Now double fire grenade launchers, for instance, Wilder Flight. In PvE does 50,606, pre-update 7.3.6. Post though, it's doing 58,724 damage. So again, quite the buff here. Inside of PvP, it was already doing 238 damage as the 2 shots could one-shot all resilience levels, and now it's doing 276. So yeah, clearly it'll get the one shot. Now, everybody's wondering, what about Mountaintop? Pre-micro missile Mountaintop was doing 37,601 damage, and that's the split there. Now though, it's doing 50,828 damage. This got the biggest jump out of everything here. Now inside of PvP, previously it was doing 245 damage. You could one-shot all resilience levels. Now though, it only does 158 damage. It cannot even one-shot your lowest resilience guardians. Now again, understand all the testing we're doing here with Micro Missile and Mountaintop is with the OG version of Mountaintop, which is Sunset. I'm excited to see though what this weapon can do inside of PvE when it starts dropping for us, which by the way will be this coming up week alongside Midnight Coup. By the way, if you haven't checked out our God rolls, we went over all the God rolls for these weapons. Some of them we've already had hands-on experience with, others what we're speculating to be the God roll. Feel free to check that video out. Next we have Fighting Lion. Previously it was doing 34 34,517 damage inside of PvE. Now it's doing 36,628 damage. Do you remember when Fighting Lion was bugged and it was doing like a tremendous amount of damage against red bars and even certain Nightfall bosses because it was coded as a red bar? What a time, right? Now inside of PvP, previously it was doing 137 damage. Again, couldn't one-shot. The purpose of Fighting Lion is really just to be annoying. Now though, it's doing 182 damage. That is quite the bump there in damage. And keep in mind, guys, this is a primary grenade launcher. So you're gonna be seeing people using Fighting Lion again inside of PvP. No, it can't one-shot, but that's not the point. The point is to be oppressive. We actually used to rock a double grenade launcher build, and dude, it was oppressive. It is so annoying to go against, but also hard to master. Exdirus PvE previously was doing 32,864 damage. Now 38,925 damage, which is a very nice buff. And we just did a build on Moth Keepers, Exdirus together. And I mentioned in that video that I felt like the weak point was Exdirus. So this buff is very much appreciated. Now Bungie also reduced the disorienting grenade radius, that being our blinding grenades on grenade launchers, both its damage and its effect by 15%. Now it's kind of hard to quantify the blinding capabilities here. What I will say, previously, you see it here, blinding many things around Carl. Post, it still blinds, but you could tell the radius is a bit smaller. Now, the next changes we're going to be covering are really just base weapon changes that apply to both PvP and PvE, but definitely everything here is more tuned with PvP in mind. For instance, we have bows. Lightweights. Bungie increased the lightweight bow base damage by 6%, and they mentioned that Love Monarch and Wishender are not affected by this change. Our crit damage was doing 117 pre-update 7.3.6, and 73 per body. Now it's doing 124 per crit and 78 per body. Now TQs is a part of this as well, and it saw an increase in damage considering it's a lightweight bow, which yes, would overlap inside of PvE. Something to keep in mind, guys. Inside of PvP though, it's doing 144 damage in its body explosion pre-updates, and now 149. The main takeaway is you're going for the crits anyways, but for my PvE players, you could take advantage of this buff. Now auto rifles. Bungie reduced the base damage of 450 round per minute autos. Previously, it was doing 36 damage per crit and 21 damage per body. You get the time to kill of 0.8 seconds in 6 crits, 1 body. Post is doing 34 damage per crit and 20 damage per body. Now, it could still get the time to kill value of 0.8 seconds, even on max resilience guardians, but it requires all 7 crits. No longer can you get the 6 crit, 1 body, unless guardians are tier 5 resilience and below. Hand cannons. We're gonna start with 180 round per minute hand cannons. Bungie increases the base damage by 6%. Pre, it was doing 67 damage per crit and 39 damage per body, and it had a TTK value of 1 second and 3 crits, 1 body. Now it's doing 71 damage per crit and 41 damage per body. Again, still the same TTK value here of 1 second, but Precision Instrument can 3-tap at tier 5 resilience and under now. Something to keep in mind, guys. You got that Word of Crota, Enhanced Precision Instrument. Huh? Is it time? Adaptives, which are 140 round per minute hand cannons. Bungie increased the body shot damage by 1% and the critical hit damage by 4%. Now, previously, it was doing 77 damage per crit and 45 damage per body. The main takeaway for this is that explosive payload on this archetype could not kill in 3 crits at all resilience levels. On top of that, regular 140s would turn into a 4-tap at any bit of damage fall off. Plus, though, we're doing 81 damage per crit and 45 damage per body. Now, what this really means is that explosive payload can now 3-tap all guardians at all resilience levels. So for my folks that are rocking explosive payload on next week's Midnight Coup or Rose, you'll be able to get the 3-tap. Also, the damage fall off here is slightly less harsh as it has about a 1 extra meter of forgiveness. So you can still get the 3-tap even outside of damage fall off, just slightly. Now, pulse rifles. We got a 3.5% increase in body shot damage for our rapid fires and a 1% increase in critical hit damage, which literally didn't move the needle at all. Pre was doing 28 damage per crit and 15 damage per body. And at max resilience, we could get a time to kill value of 0.8 seconds at 8 crits, 1 body. Now, everything here is exactly the same. Again, the numbers here, the way they round, you're never even going to notice it. Now, you may be wondering, all right, what is the difference? 28 damage per crit, 15 damage per body, still the same time to kill values, still the same forgiveness. What does it mean, man? Well, it's the resilience levels, guys. If you notice here, you can get the 7 crit 2 body at tier 5 resilience versus tier 2 in the previous updates, which is very nice. And at tier 4 resilience, you can now get the 0.73 time to kill value in 8 crits versus previously only happening at tier 1 resilience. So rapid fires are better. If you look just at the top end time to kill value though, you're like, oh my God, nothing changed. But as you go through the different resilience thresholds, rapid fires are much more forgiving. And let me just say, if you got a craftable scalar potential, break it out. It's shredding. Now moving on to lightweight pulse rifles. Bungie increased the body shot damage by 6%, and they increased the critical hit damage by 3%. We're talking pre was doing 31 damage per crit and 17 damage per body. The time to kill value of 0.87 seconds at max resilience of 8 crits, and at tier 7 resilience and below, it can get the kill in 7 crits, 1 body. Post, it's doing 32 damage per crit and 18 damage per body. Now what does this mean? This means even at max resilience, you can get the kill in 7 crits in 1 body. Matter of fact, at tier 5 resilience and below, you can get the kill in 6 crits, 2 body, 0.87 seconds. That's a lot of forgiveness. And what this is really setting things up for is Outbreak Perfected with its craftable roll and Headseeker. It is going to be a monster. For the time being though, if you've got a BXR roll, if you've got a Chattering Bone, break it out guys. It should be feeling a lot better. Now adaptives. Bungie increased the body shot damage by 5% and the critical hit damage by 2%. Previously it was doing 36 damage per crit and 20 damage per body. Now TTK wise, we're looking at 6 crits, 1 body in 0.93 seconds at tier 10 resilience, all the way down to tier 3. And only until you got to like tier 2 and below did you start to see that extra forgiveness. And funny enough, if you had tier 0 resilience, you can get 2 bursts by an adaptive pulse rifle. Now posts, we're doing 37 damage per crit and 21 damage per body. This means essentially the same time to kill value, but notice that 5 crit 2 body in 0.93 seconds happens sooner. Instead of it being tier 2 resilience, we could start doing it as early as tier 6 resilience. And then the ability to 2 burst a guardian. That happens at tier 3 resilience now. Now I know, how many people are actually walking around at tier 3 resilience? Probably not many. But the point is that adaptives are a lot more forgiving. And honestly, I think they're like the easiest archetype of pulse rifles to use. Now moving on to scout rifles. Rapid fires. Bungie increased the base damage by 2%. Previously it was doing 54 damage per crit and 28 damage per body, and could get the time to kill of 0.93 seconds and 4 crits in 1 body, all resilience levels. Post, it's doing 55 damage per crit and 29 damage per body. Now it can get the kill in 4 crits 1 body at 0.93 seconds on all resilience levels, but at tier 3 resilience and below, it can get the kill in 0.93 seconds at 3 crits and 2 body. Now here's the thing, if you've got a Fang of Ear Utes with enhanced precision instruments, that roll just got a lot better. It was already good, but now it's even better. Now shotguns. Bungie made a change here to precision shotguns where they corrected an issue that was causing precision shotguns to require 1 extra pellet to kill a max resilience guardian. Previously, missing 2 pellets at max resilience would not get the kill. Now though, you can miss 2 pellets and still kill a max resilience guardian. Hallelujah, Matador, Fractashite, you're still amazing. Now guys, I'm not gonna go over perks like Massive Arms or Magnificent Howl or Micro Missile. I've already touched on that in our God Roll video. However, I do want to touch on Magnificent Howl just real quick. Again, this perk has been redesigned where Precision Final Blows grant stacks, and reloading converts the stacks into Magnificent Howl rounds that will deal greatly increased damage and have additional range. And getting a precision kill with Magnificent Howl active converts an additional round. This stacked up to 10 times, and each shot is a 50% damage buff, and it adds an extra 3 meters of range. In PvP, on just this version of Luna's Howl, damage fall-off begins at 31 meters. With Magnificent Howl, that kicks up to 34 meters. The main takeaway with this is that inside of PvP, you can most definitely get 2 taps. A lot of things we're going to be testing with Luna's Howl, especially in the damage department inside of PvE. But overall, Luna's Howl is looking to be a monster for both PvP and PvE. Now moving on to our Crucible only changes. We've got Sunshot. Bungie increased the precision damage by 11%. Previously it was doing 72 damage per crit and 40 damage per body. The main takeaway for this is that previously it could not get the 3 tap on Guardians at any resilience level, but now it does 77 damage per crit and 40 damage per body, which means it can get the 3 tap on all resilience levels. Keep in mind guys, Sunshot is the only 150 round per minute hand cannon in the game. Now Wishender, Bungie reduced the base damage by 5%. This is only a PvP change. Previously its crit damage was 141 damage per crit and 92 damage per body. Now it's doing 135 damage per crit and 88 damage per body. This is like the second nerf Wishender has gotten inside of PvP. Bungie is not wanting you to get free wall hacks and high damage. Now Flinch. This is arguably one of the biggest changes you're going to notice inside of PvP. There's been a reduction in flinch taken by all primary weapons by 15%. And we tested a bunch of different weapons, from 20 round per minute hand cannons, high impact pulse rifles, high impact scout rifles, 900 round per minute SMGs, 600 round per minute auto rifles, 450 round per minute auto rifles, and an explosive payload rose. Here are the side-by-side comparisons. And I will say some of these weapons are just more noticeable noticeable than others. But what I will say, at least in my own subjective experience, the reduction in flinch is noticeable. So if you've ever played PvP and you're like, dude, I don't like my shot getting moved off target just because somebody is blowing their load in my face. Well, if that's the case, guys, I think you're going to appreciate this change to flinch. My time playing Trials of Osiris on Friday was really nice. And one of the first things Frostbolt and I talked about was that, hey, the flinch changes, they're noticeable. And my primary shot feels really good. So there you go, guys. That is your pre and post testing for update 7.3.6. Let me know in the comments below if we missed anything. These videos take a lot of time and a lot of testing, so a like on these are very appreciated. Also, big shout out to the team on this. There's lots of members here that contribute to the testing here. It's some long hours being pulled to get all the pre and post data, so thank you very much. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.